Thank you, Debbie. It's so nice to be back in Santa Fe. In the late 1980s, I was registered as a licensed landscape architect in the state, and in the early 1990s, I moved to Santa Fe to record the cultural landscape of Chimayo, New Mexico, and I did several other projects for the State Highway Department before I left. I'm here today to talk about cultural landscapes of the New Deal era in Florida. Nine parks created under Roosevelt's New Deal form the foundation of the Florida State Park system. Our federal government aided Florida between 1933 and 1942 to develop Highlands, Hammock, Hillsborough River, Myakka River, Oleno, Torreya, Fort Clinch, Goldhead Branch, Florida Caverns, and Ravine Gardens state parks. These 9 parks exemplify the National Park Service rustic style of recreational architecture and site master planning. Using rough-cut timber and rubble stone, English arts and crafts detailing, and cluster compositions of a harmonious rural setting. The park's building program was derived from pattern books, such as Park and Recreation Structures, compiled by Albert Good, resulting in a common architectural theme statewide with regional variations. The recreational amenities also are derived from pattern books, such as Recreation Plans Handbook, compiled by Albert Davis Taylor. But each park is a distinctive product of well-chosen land parcels, representing the diversity of the physiographical regions of Florida. The responsiveness to the land of each park site master plan is a testament to the skill of the landscape architect's careful integration of buildings and recreational amenities in harmony with nature, rendering each park unique and its cultural landscape character defining. The Florida State Legislature created the Florida State Park System in 1925, but appropriated no funding. In 1927, the legislature created the State Board of Forestry and subsidiary Florida Forest Service, which became the vehicle by which the state park system would come into being. And in 1933, the legislature directed the board to select land parcels on which to develop parks to be funded by federal assistance. No funding for land purchase was appropriated, and acquisition was pursued through donations. Highlands Hammock State Park was established in 1934 on land purchased for preservation in 1929 by the Florida Tropical Parks Association. This 500-acre parcel near the city of Sebring on the central Florida highlands was a vestige of the hardwood tropical forest that once extended across Florida. A private park was developed with careful study and sympathetic restraint to preserve the scenic perfection and biological wealth of the forest. Freeman Tilden, a leading authority on state parks at the time, described Highlands Hammock Park as one of the most fascinating of American wildernesses. As the economy worsened in 1933, discussions led to preserving this magnificent forest by donating Highlands Hammock Park in 2 square miles of adjacent land to the state, on which to establish the Florida State Botanical Garden and Arboretum. Acceptance of this donation made this park the first unit of the Florida State Park system. An advisory board of nationally prominent leaders in park and recreational planning, including landscape architects Frederick Law Olmsted Jr., John Nolan, and Albert Davis Taylor, assembled to guide the strategy creating Florida State first state park. The National Park Service hired landscape architect Charles Fenton from the Albert Davis Taylor firm in 1935 as park project superintendent, overseeing development of the botanical garden. A year later, Fenton was promoted to supervisor inspector over all CCC parks in Florida, where his professional skill and judgment contributed to the high quality and uniformity of the parks. A workforce of 200 youth with a superintendent and technical and supervisory staff was assembled to develop the park. The Army provided standardized camp layouts, barracks and workshops, vehicles, tools, and building materials. At the onset of World War II, work on the Botanical Garden was abandoned. The Highlands Hammock unit was completed and today features the Florida CCC Museum. Hillsborough River State Park is a natural environment of rich diversity. But at the beginning of the 20th century, the ancient forest had been cut, and in 1934, the derelict land was donated to the state for a forestry restoration project. Landscape architect Francis French was hired as a consultant to assist with the park site master planning, but he resigned, and William Phillips was hired from the Olmsted Brothers firm. The park site master plan bears the names of landscape architects Walter Coldwell and Emmett Hill. The park recreational amenities are centered along a series of Class II rapids, one of the few such large rapids in Florida. In 1935, a workforce of 60 enrollees arrived to improve a natural swimming area, construct shelters and an amphitheater of native limestone along the riverbank, and a suspension bridge crossing the river connecting hiking trails. This cluster of recreational amenities, along with the entry station and administrative complex, are outstanding examples of New Deal era rustic architecture and land planning. Myakka River State Park is one of the largest in Florida, covering 58 square miles. It is the southernmost and most subtropical of these 9 parks. The vast openness has been compared to the African veldt. The park is noted for migratory birds, so abundant that it has been described as reaching spectacular concentrations. The contribution of an African-American workforce is notable. Black enrollees were stationed at the park in 1935, and the white community protested under Jim Crow laws. The state representative warned that the workforce would build the park or the camp would be abandoned. The white community objected, and the camp was evacuated. Removal of federal relief money from the local economy led to the community to repent, and the workforce returned. The workforce entered a landscape of stunning beauty and rattlesnakes. Conditions in the camp were very unsatisfactory at first. With outdoor kitchens and no floors, rattlesnakes crawled into tents. Some enrollees became sick with malaria, and others deserted, shocked by the primitive conditions they had to endure. The park site master plan was produced in 1934 under acting Florida State Park Service Director Charles Schaefer and bears the names of landscape architects Emmett Hill and Walter Coldwell, with Francis French as consultant. Landscape architect William Cook produced building plans for overnight cabins along the Myakka River, standing firmly along limestone piers and featuring large stone fireplaces and chimneys. Superintendent A.D. Lawson commented that the grace and distinction of the picnic pavilion, ashlar floor constructed of carefully sawed limestone, was the park's glory. Oleno State Park originated in 1934 as a state forestry camp on land with a long and rich history of human use. The town of Oleno was established in the mid-1800s, where the Santa Fe River sinks underground and forms a natural bridge. Water from dams on the river powered sawmills, and the prosperity resulted in Oleno growing large enough to have a post office, until construction of the railroad bypassed the town and set off its decline. The ghost town was selected for development of a state forest service training camp under the auspices of the WPA. The funding expired in 1935, work came to a standstill, and the facility was turned over to the Florida State Park System. Landscape architect Emmett Hill produced the park site master plan centered along the river, with mess hall, lodge, and cabins, museum, picnic pavilion, stone amphitheater, and a suspension bridge crossing the river connecting hiking trails, all constructed of native materials harvested and manufactured on the site. Torreya State Park in the northern highlands of northwest Florida is a landscape of high bluffs and deep ravines where clear streams flow over waterfalls, sink underground, and resurface downstream. It is the fabled forest of Torreya trees, visited by Harvard botanist Assia Gray in 1875. The forest was intentionally cut over before 320 uncut acres were donated for the core of the new park. CCC Camp SP6 was installed in 1935 to conduct forestry, land conservation, and road construction, but abandoned in 1937 due to funding reductions. A side camp from Florida, Caverns, was transferred to the park in 1939 and resumed the work. Landscape architect Emmett Hill oversaw production of the park site master plan, creating an antebellum motif recalling life in the Old South during the early 19th century when plantations and slavery stretched from Jacksonville to Pensacola. The Gregory Plantation House was disassembled from along the Apalachicola River, barge across to the park, reassembled as the visitor center high on the bluff overlooking the river. Moving and reassembling the house required most of the workforce, leaving the park largely undeveloped. Fort Clinch State Park overlooks the St. Mary River on Cumberland Sound along the Atlantic coast of northeast Florida. Construction of the pentagonal-shaped red brick fortress began in 1847 as a component of the federal third system fortifications. Advances in cannon technology rendered the thick masonry walls obsolete, and the fort was never finished. Landscape architect Emmett Hill oversaw production of the park site master plan for recreational amenities, environmental restoration, and treatment for preserving, rehabilitating, and restoring the fort. CCC Camp SP8, a company of mature and skilled World War I veterans, was transferred to the park from Ocala National Forest in 1937. Work progressed slowly, leaving sections of the fort as stabilized ruins. Several new buildings were constructed using the surplus brick. A beautiful 3-mile drive was constructed to the fort through live oak forest and across sand dunes, with spur roads leading off to scenic overlooks, picnic areas, and overnight trailer camps. Gold Head Ranch lies upon the rolling red clay sandhills within broad uplands of the Central Florida Ridge. The karst landscape is dotted with sinkhole lakes, including one of the oldest in the state, approximately 24,000 years old. The principal natural feature is the ravine, 40 feet deep, 1.5 miles long, reaching several hundred feet across. The park takes its name from the stream in the ravine, originating from many springs merging to form the substantial flowing Gold Head Branch. A nature trail encircling the wooded, fern-lined ravine, and a footbridge crossing the stream near the remains of 19th century gristmill were constructed by the CCC. The park was developed between 1937 and 1939 with landscape architect Emmett Hill overseeing production of the park site master plan. CCC Company 2444, consisting of 25 mature veterans from World War I, all seasons craftsmen, and 200 youth, were installed to develop the park. They built the most complete New Deal era park in Florida, constructing wood frame cabins, a sand beach with a swimming area and concession facility, large picnic shelters overlooking the lakes, the contact station, and entry gate, all in the rustic style, which has been described as having a Boy Scout feeling. Florida Caverns State Park was created on a spectacular karst landscape of limestone cliffs, caverns, sinkholes, flowing streams, springs, and clear streams that makes the park one of the crown jewels of the Florida State's park system. The Marinara Caverns Association started to develop the so-called Indian Cave in the early 1930s as a tourist attraction, and later donated the land to the state for the park. This was the last full CCC camp activated in Florida with federal assistance to stimulate the local economy. A side camp of local experienced men and 25 enrollees detached from Torreya State Park to excavate the Indian Cave discovered a spectacular cavern named the Florida Cavern, and it became the focus of park building activities. Superintendent A.D. Lawson, known for his ability to execute speedy and efficient work, was transferred from Myakka River Park to supervise the workforce. Landscape architects Emmett Hill oversaw the park site master planning, Ray Vinton served as work inspector, and Walter Coldwell served as project coordinator. A 3,000-foot long underground trail system was surveyed and designed with architectural drawings produced for entry and exit portals with steel doors to secure the cavern from trespass. The workforce, known as the Gopher Gang, tunneled 55 feet underground with pick, shovel, and wheelbarrow, removing mud to enlarge and reveal the spectacular cavern featuring wonders of stalactites, stalagmites, soda straws, flow stones, dripstone formations, and draperies. The buildings in the park are constructed of locally quarried limestone and are among the most notable accomplishments of the rustic style in Florida. Foundations of the visitor center are sunk into bedrock, and multiple levels of the building are terraced with stone retaining walls and stone steps, while integrating organically into the landscape. Last but not least, Ravine Garden State Park is located in Myakka, a historic port city on the St. John River in northeast Florida, and one of the most southerly resorts for winter visitors to the state. The park encompasses 2 adjoining ravines enhanced with stone terraces and dazzling botanic display. The park was initiated by the community to draw tourism to the city and later federally funded by the Work Progress Administration. This is only one of these 9 parks that had no CCC participation in its development. Landscape architect Richard Forrester produced the park site master plan. Born in Holland into a family of landscape gardeners, he served as beautification director for the WPA in Florida. He also served as the Palatka city manager and supervised construction of this park that became known as the nation's outstanding WPA project. The Court of States inside the entrance at the top of the ravine is a marvelous architectural space. The grassy rectangle is framed by paired limestone pillars of a pergola rising 15 feet, supporting a lattice of sable palm logs, framing the commemorative Roosevelt Arch that soars 65 feet into the sky. Beyond this court, leading into the ravine, the park is transformed from geometry to nature. Think of Villa Lante in reverse. Limestone terraces buttressed with stone retaining walls are interconnected by sweeping flights of stone stairs, becoming increasingly natural looking as they descend 100 feet to sky-reflecting lakes surrounded by forest at the bottom. This design landscape is a brilliant work of great artistry and an outstanding example of the high art of landscape architecture created by the New Deal in Florida. Joseph Pratt, the Southeast Regional Direct Engineer of the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, stated, "This park is a project which not only Florida, but the entire FARA is proud. The skillful blending of artificiality with nature is superb." Each of these 9 parks is a historically significant design landscape. Together, these parks represent the deep foundation of the Florida State Park system. Management of these landscapes as natural resources rather than as historic resources is resulting in an incremental and often barely perceptible decline of historic integrity. Such impairment will continue in the near term, and likely until cultural landscapes are understood, appreciated, and protected as legacies of our state heritage. May I have your questions now, please?